Good evening, welcome to Prime Edition. I am Cynthia, Nyamai. Now, the biggest story today, and we've been talking about it over the last couple of days, a warning that the president has given over environment at the United Nations Environment Assembly. And in business, we do have a tea report for you that will be telling you some of the opportunities in Kenya this year. And in sports, we have lots of details and action for you coming up shortly after the business stories. But first, let's have the highlights. Medics' protest turns tragic as tear gas canister lands on KMPDU Secretary General's head. Flight to Addis Ababa. 4 of Africa's presidents so far supporting Raila Odinga's bid for the African Union Commission chairmanship. And a contest of the learned friends. Members of the Law Society of Kenya go to the polls to pick their next presidents. Welcome back. Our sign language interpreter is Byron, and if you'd like to even talk to us and make suggestions, you are welcome to do so on our social media pages. That is on Instagram, Facebook, and also Twitter, KBC Channel 1. Now, President William Ruto says the world faces a triple planetary crisis of climate change, nature, biodiversity loss, and pollution and plastic waste. Addressing the 6th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly high-level segment and also the national statements in Nairobi, the head of state said these monumental challenges can only be tackled through an effective multilateral approach. President Ruto at the same time called for international collaboration to promote life cycles approaches to waste management, noting that it is vital for sustaining the blue economy and its ecosystems. Alvin Kaunda reports.
President William Ruto joined delegates from across the world in the 6th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly high-level segment and national statements in Nairobi. The head of state noted that Kenya has instituted a comprehensive institutional framework that seeks to anchor decisive interventions across numerous sectors, including energy and pollution.
Global greenhouse gas emissions are still on the rise. Pollution patterns are veering in an alarming direction, and biodiversity is confronted with multifaceted and escalating threats, along with the risk of an accelerating rate of loss.
President Ruto called for an inclusion of fundamental structural dimensions in the global climate change reform agenda so as to realign multilateral institutions with core values of the international community as the basis of enhanced effectiveness and inclusivity.
As humankind, we are faced with a critical decision to radically alter our course or persist on the current path, endangering our very existence. Undoubtedly, we collectively appreciate this predicament, yet our track record on course correcting is mixed.
His sentiments were echoed by UN Environment Programme Executive Director Inger Anderson, who noted the need for a pushback against the climate change crisis.
Therefore, we need to find the solutions, and the solutions are entirely doable. We need to eliminate the unnecessary. Nature has wrapped many things for us, but we don't need to wrap again.
At the same time, President Ruto appealed to world leaders to back Nairobi's bid to host the Secretariat of the Global Plastics Treaty at the United Nations Environmental Programme offices in Gigiri.
We, of course, are continuously working on how to expand the horizon so that we bring on board, as we have done this time round, on plastic bottles as well. You may want to know that we have legislation now that takes this all the way to make sure that producers extended life producer responsibility is part of the equation in our legislation and in our policy framework.
But the reason why we encourage that time limit is because this is a real problem. Plastic fills our waterways, plastic goes into our oceans, we have plastic in our bodies, and it is not, as we heard from Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus.
The Global Plastics Treaty seeks to establish a comprehensive framework encompassing accountability standards, financing mechanisms, material and chemical standards, import and export regulations, and ambitious targets to combat plastic pollution worldwide. For Prime Edition, I'm Alvin Counder.
The Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists is threatening that its members will go on strike in solidarity with their Secretary General, Dr. Davji Atela, who was hit by a tear gas canister and injured during protests in Nairobi. KMPDU National Chairman Dr. Agidan Mwachi, who addressed the media in Mombasa County, calling on authorities to conduct thorough investigations and bring to book the person who injured Dr. Atta. At the same time, Dr. Mwachi opposed the rollout of Social Health Insurance Fund, lamenting that doctors will lack comprehensive coverage and will be forced to dig deeper into their pockets, hence worsening the financial situation where many healthcare workers are already facing.
Intern doctors are sent on internship as a prerequisite for them to be registered, and the total number of interns right now waiting to be deployed is around 1,600. Those are doctors, and they're supposed to serve internship for 1 year. And that is to say that they're the ones who manage the emergency departments as you see it, and after that they cannot be registered until they complete the internship. We all know that the National Health Insurance Fund, yes, was beleaguered with corruption issues, and the government is well placed to capture the corrupt officers in the National Health Insurance scheme. However, in its own wisdom, but mostly lack of it, they choose to burn down the house and reintroduce a scheme under very amorphous circumstances. Then, in that, they forget something called comprehensive insurance.
We gave our notice, they received, and thank God in our office we have our copy that was stamped and approved. Of course, by Kenyan law, we don't need any permission by the police to picket. We just need to alert them. But on this one, they granted us and even told us the route to follow up to Treasury. That's why we don't understand why they will then turn around and use violence on people who are nothing but peaceful.
Opposition leader Raila Odinga says his campaign for the African Union Commission chairmanship is on course following endorsement from a section of leaders in the East African community led by President William Ruto. According to the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition leader, President Samia Suluhu of Tanzania, Yoweri Museveni of Uganda, Salva Kiir of South Sudan, and Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa have given him the thumbs up as he begins popularizing his bid across the continent. Giverson Maina has the report for you.
Opposition Chief Raila Odinga on Wednesday said that his journey to become the next chairman of the African Union Commission was gaining momentum. Raila revealing that a section of heads of state and government in the continent have endorsed his candidature.
Juzi mimi nilikutana na Ruto na Museveni. Nilienda kutafuta kura ya Museveni. Sawa. Ruto vilevile akaja pale, alikuwa vilevile na shughuli pale. Akutana na yeye. Nikamwambia hata wewe nataka kura yako. Wakakubali yeye na Museveni ya kwamba watanipiga mimi kura.
The former Prime Minister, who opened the Marani Town Aggregation and Marketing Center in Kitutu Chache North in Kisii County, said he will begin shuttle diplomacy to popularize his bid in the continent, starting with Rwanda.
Sasa mimi wiki ijayo hii mimi naenda kuona na Kagame. Kagame vile vile nataka aingie ndani. Mama Suluhu tayari amesema ako tayari atanipiga mimi kura. Sasa bwana Salva Kiir amekubali. Sasa hii bara hii yote Afrika Mashariki yote nataka kufyaka. Sasa mimi naona yule ambaye atatoka tutamanyana naye tu kwa kiwanja.
He, however, stated that if successful, the role in Addis Ababa will not derail his mandate as the opposition leader.
Nikienda Addis Ababa hapa ni saa 2 tu na ndege. Nalala hapa Kisii, asubuhi natoka na ndege, saa 4 nimefika kule, nafanya kazi. Siku Friday mimi narudi. Na mkinitaka kwa kazi ile nyingine yote, mimi niko. Nasema hiyo ikae kwanza, mimi nitakuja kufanya hii wananchi.
You will be the first Kenyan to be sitting on that seat.
At the same time, the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition leader, who was accompanied by a section of leaders from Nyanza, including Kisii County Governor Simbarati and Ochilo Ayako of Migori County, faulted national government administration officers for dictating to governors how to manage the devolved units.
Naomba kwa sababu tuko na serikali mbili Kenya hii, serikali kuu na serikali ya ugatuzi. Nyinyi mkuwe tayari kuilinda serikali ya ugatuzi.
Giverson Minor, Prime Edition.
And still on that story, the government fully supports former Prime Minister Raila Odinga's candidature for the African Union Commission chairmanship and has lined up proper mechanism to help campaign for him. Government spokesperson Isaac Mwaura has said. Mwaura, in his weekly brief, said the former Prime Minister possesses the requisite qualifications and standing in the society that would help propel the commission to the next level. Simon with that report.
He is indeed a statesman, a patriot, and a Pan-Africanist who has made substantial contributions to the betterment of the Kenya's political, socio-economic sectors. The government is therefore in full support of his candidature, and his win, therefore, will be also a win for Kenya and the East African region and Africa as a whole. And it's actually going to make this country shine beyond its borders. As you know very well, they have had a meeting in Uganda with President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. And that means East Africa is strongly united in supporting this candidature of Right Honorable Raila Odinga. And, you know, sometimes they say a prophet is not honored at home. Maybe, and we pray, that Raila Odinga can therefore really become the African Union Commission chair.
The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission Chief Executive Officer Twalib Mbarak says the commission is not at war with the Director of Public Prosecution, but has disagreed with the prosecutor over the withdrawal of high-profile cases at the courts. Speaking at Pwani University in Kilifi County during a public lecture on youth and good governance, Twalib said he met with the counterpart, Renson Mulele, to discuss the latest developments.
The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission EACC has broken its silence over the latest back and forth with the DPP over the withdrawal of high-profile cases before the courts.
Let us not say there's a fight between EACC and ODPP. No, there is no fight. We have just disagreed with them on 3 cases.
Speaking at Pwani University in Kilifi County during a public lecture on youth and good governance, EACC CEO Twalib Mbarak says that there is no tiff between the two offices.
Yesterday I was with the ODPP at the National Council of Administrative Justice at Pride Inn Hotel in Mombasa, and we discussed so many issues that are of the benefit to all for the EACC and the DPP. These were specific cases that we disagreed with them. But it does not mean we are at war with the ODPP.
The anti-graft body opposed an application by the DPP seeking the withdrawal of charges against the former officials of Geothermal Development Company GDC. The EACC similarly opposed plans to drop abuse of office charges against former Kenya Pipeline Company KPC Managing Director Charles Tanui, former KPC Chief Engineer Mr. Josephat Kipkoech Sirma, as well as Mr. Elias Maina Karumi, our Chief Technical Manager.
There is no problem ODPP differing with the EACC. We have so many files that we send to the DPP, and the DPP gives concurrence for us to charge.
Meanwhile, the Commission has urged the youth to shun corruption in all its forms, as they are vulnerable to such vices.
That 75% of the problems that afflict our society will be solved. If we do away with drugs, alcohol, and other substances,
young people here will be seeking jobs. And when you seek jobs in a country which has not invested in integrity, we will suffer the most as young people.
As we have agreed here in a forum with the youth, that corruption eats into the future of our nation, and we must be able to deal with that.
This as Twalib maintains that corruption remains the #1 security threat to the nation. Abdiaziz Hashim from Pwani University, Kilifi County.
Vote counting is underway across the country, hours after 15,000 members of the Lawyer Society of Kenya went to the ballot to elect new representatives for the next 2 years. 5 contenders are eyeing the top seat. They include lawyers Peter Wanyama, Faith Odhiambo, Bernard Kipngetich, Njoki Mboshe, and Caroline Kamande.
Who will be the next president of the Law Society of Kenya? Lawyers went to the ballot Thursday in 36 centers across the country after Justice Lawrence Mugambi of Milimani High Court rejected a last-minute attempt by Advocate Yashim Butende to halt the much-awaited polls. In Kiambu County, lawyers say the election provides the Law Society of Kenya with the strength to renew the fight against the establishment of judiciary kiosks in Huduma centers across the country.
And I can see through our engagement as stakeholders that the judiciary has taken steps to try and remove this backlog. And we as stakeholders support those efforts. But now taking it to the Huduma kiosks, that is in no way going to reduce the backlog. All it does is to ensure that there's continued this inflation or only infiltration of quacks into the space of practice, and they are going to now make the quality of judicial service to be watered down.
Meanwhile, the Law Society of Kenya Western Branch says the allegations of corruption in the country's judicial system are unfounded.
Nashangaa kuambiwa ati mtu kama judge anaweza kuchukua pesa kwa mtu corruption. Ya nini? Umeenda kwa school kweli? Ukawa magistrate au senior advocate, uende uchukue corruption. Hata niliambia vijana wa hapa, siamini hiyo inaweza kuwa ukweli.
The lawyers argue that the claims were intended to taint the institution's integrity. The Law Society of Kenya presidency is a non-renewable 2-year term and is critical in promoting the affairs of the society.
Vote counting continues, and we will be following up with that story for you. And even when the numbers come through, we will definitely have that live section for you tomorrow. Now, a section of media players have noted with concern the widespread use of artificial intelligence to produce fake news content that compromises the integrity of news reporting. At the launch of Global Media Congress White Paper, a document that offers solutions to pressing global media issues, Mohammed Jalal, the Director General, Emirates News Agency, noted the need to equip journalists with the necessary skills to distinguish between artificially generated content and authentic journalism. Participants at the forum further emphasized the importance of investing in digital literacy and called on media practitioners to collaborate with relevant institutions and ensure that journalism remains a force of truth and accountability in an increasing digital world.
Also, we need to be ready for those changes in a way that can take the advantage of the new change and also avoid any negativity that will come with these changes. And I think you have to be positive and take advantage of update your skills and be part of the future.
Technology is now being developed which enables those who have content to protect themselves. 2, there is the legal regime. What do we do about the laws and regulation to protect the interests of those who generate content? And you can see that the thrust of the discussion is about not killing the march of change, but managing it so that change happens, but that which we have right now is also protected.
The Kenya Medical Research Institute has secured 7 billion shillings in funding to advance an HIV vaccine research in collaboration with partners from the African continent. The 5-year funding from the United States Agency for International Development will facilitate African scientists in developing a viable vaccine candidate based on previous trials. Wycliffe Okech with more details.
The journey towards developing an HIV vaccine has been boosted by 7 billion shillings funding from the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. Following the funding, Kemri researchers will now bury their heads in the lab to advance and develop an African-led HIV vaccine candidate.
This has been a big shot for us to be able to reach the target in a very short time, because funding is really very critical for us to be able to get this.
This project has been funded for 5 years. USAID has given us a very strict timeline to get the vaccine in 5 years.
Officials from Cambridge say lessons learned from failed 7 previous attempts will be vital in making the new project a success.
And there have been 7 efficacy trials that have been done for HIV vaccine, and all of them have failed. They didn't produce the results we wanted. But we learned something, because in the process of doing the 7, we actually identify a group of people that were protected by the vaccine, even though the number was small. And now we are trying to figure out how can we make everybody respond the same way.
The African continent is responsible for nearly 70% of HIV prevalence across the globe, hence the vitality of an African-led vaccine. The Institute has also launched a minimal invasive sampling and testing procedure van to be used in the provision of mortuary services in Kisumu and Siaya counties.
This project, which have been supported by Bill Gates and which our team has really been working on, has been to actually have this van right at the village level. When there's a death, then immediately when the team is activated, go and take the samples. Then from that we can be able to inform not only the ministry, but we can also inform the community and even the household that this has been the cause of death of this particular child.
Kemri Acting Director General Professor Elijah Sangok says this unique facility is vital in child mortality studies with the eventual goal of preventing the same.
Kenya and Kuwait have submitted a joint bid to co-chair the Global Counterterrorism Forum East Africa Working Group. The bid to head the 32-country-strong platform was made during the 23rd Global Counterterrorism Forum Coordinating Committee meeting at a Nairobi hotel. National Security Advisor Ambassador Monica Juma says the two countries bring frontline experiences and perspectives that speak to the geographical context and thematic issues relevant to the region.
Rich in contact and content week.
The two-day conference that seeks to strengthen the strategic long-term international approach to counter-terrorism saw Kenya and Kuwait commit to building on the foundation established by Egypt and the European Union in their co-chairmanship of the East Africa Working Group.
Our two countries bring frontline experiences and perspectives that speak to the geographical context and thematic issues relevant to the region, and remain committed to working closely with GCTF member states and our neighbors in the region to deliver on shared priorities.
While acknowledging emerging trends in terror in the wake of technological advancements, member states were called upon to adopt effective multilateral framework to resolve the persistent and evolving threat of terrorism and violent extremism.
And we look to Kenya and Kuwait, to which we will come soon, to renew the GCTF efforts within the East Africa Capacity Building Group on this part of Africa.
We have to make sure that the work of the inspired institutions is complementing each other, not redundant to each other.
Member states were further called upon to reflect on the outcomes realized so far and chart a clear path to deliver the desired goals for all.
We can work together with other partners to address initiatives that will help us create resilience within our communities, and avoiding recruitment into terrorism.
Isufor reporting for Prime Edition.
Well, it's time for a break, and after this, we will be having the business news for you.
In August 1979, President Daniel Arap Moi officially opened the Moi International Airport in Mombasa. This has become the leading entrance of international direct tourist flights from abroad, with all services and facilities to match its new role.
Shamba ni mbili, yako ni gani? Kwenye star 570 hash. Every 100 shillings unayotumia kwa Lucky Game inakupa 1 entry point ya kuingia kwenye drum ya draw, ambayo inakupa fursa ya kujishindia moja kati ya shamba hizi mbili. Mwisho wa April namtangaza mshindi wa shamba hili la 1.1 million Kenyan shillings, na unapata title deed yako safi. Na mwisho wa Mei namtangaza mshindi wa shamba hili la 1.1 million Kenyan shillings, lori za mawe na mchanga. Ploti ndizo hizi. Dial star 570 hash. Title deed ndio hii. Fuka na shake.
Welcome to Sensei Institute. Mahali skills zangu ni pesa mkononi. At Sensei College, practical skills is the definition. Accredited by the government and founded on a Christian background, Sensei College offers all-rounded programs that are tailor-made to enhance your skills and give you the future you desire. We offer courses such as interior design, fashion and design, hairdressing and beauty, hospitality courses, trailer driving and defensive driving, building construction technology, CCTV, solar and electrical installation, photography and video production, electronic courses, vehicle electronics and mechanic courses, agricultural mechanics, ICT, and many more. To enroll in any of our campuses in Nairobi and Nakuru, all you need is your national ID card. Mapema do best. Take advantage of our monthly intake. Come to kusort na skills. Sensei College, my skills, my future.
带你吃好吃的，就是平时你爸你妈不让你吃的，我带你去。OK。
就像墨子说的，天空是内层壳，上面有大量小洞。
叔叔，现在不准吸烟。
好。没想到我见证了墨子文明的毁灭，伟大的天文现象，太伟大了！这个游戏太伟大了。
Welcome back. It's now time for business. Kenya earned 180.57 billion shillings from exporting 522.92 million kilos of tea last year. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua attributes the increased production to good rains experienced between April and December last year and distribution of subsidized fertilizers to the farmers.
In 2022, Kenya exported 450 million kilos of tea, earning 138 billion shillings. The figures rose in 2023, powered by a combination of good rains, increasing produce after distribution of the subsidized fertilizer, and a strong dollar. Export volumes in 2023 increased 16% to 522 million kilos, while earnings rose to 180 billion shillings.
Several Kenyan tea companies, including Ketepa, have opened distribution networks in West and Central Africa. I therefore urge the tea traders to continue harnessing the opportunities currently under the guided initiative with ECOWAS, where there are 15 member countries with whom they can enjoy preferential negotiated tariffs.
Kenya is keen to expand markets for local produce to increase exports and earnings. This is through, among others, ensuring that Kenyan tea in the global market is branded to leverage the high-quality green leaf the country produces.
We have, through our subsidiary, Greenland Feather, facilitated access to friendly credit services, significantly lowering lending rates from 21% to a mere 8%. This empowers our farmers to invest in their future and unleash their full potential.
In addition, the government is keen to increase production of specialty tea by setting up more production lines for the orthodox tea. The Deputy President wants those who have court cases to withdraw them, since they are frustrating tea reforms and hindering realization of higher benefits for farmers. Gachagua says it is wrong for actors in the tea value chain to file cases that are hampering efforts to make the sector more lucrative.
Court cases have frustrated reforms in the subsector, and in Kericho we did agree with all the stakeholders that they will withdraw the cases before court to allow the reforms to be beneficial to the farmer. Some have, unfortunately, others have not. I want to call upon all the stakeholders who mean well for the Kenyan farmer, who genuinely mean well for the Kenyan farmer, to please withdraw those cases and allow these reforms to be implemented fully for the benefit of the Kenyan farmer.
Investors should devise innovative funding models to expand financing to small and medium-sized enterprises. Speakers at the just concluded ScanCap Africa Summit 2024 held in Nairobi expressed concerns about the large numbers of SMEs who continue to fail as a result of challenges assessing sustainable capital.
Blended finance is the use of development finance to mobilize additional finance. Kenya is one of the countries that has attracted this kind of financing through commercial capital for projects and SMEs that contribute to sustainable development. But financiers say the concept is still new, even as SMEs seek new ways of attracting capital.
The reason why we need blended finance is to create these investable assets for this large quantum of capital that's sitting on the sidelines, and that's really what we're trying to do.
A lot of the natural capital where the potential is also held as public assets, and so by the time you really have investable private sector-led models, it's going to take courage from all stakeholders, and it's also going to take indeed availability of a lot of concessional capital in order to, test and try whatever is going to work.
Some investors point to poor bookkeeping and business acumen that has made most SMEs miss out on funding. Here, innovators are emerging to close that gap.
Informal or not formally registered. They can't access to any kind of business payment solutions. So they're all going to use cash or their personal mobile money account to conduct all their business transactions. And because of that, they don't have any kind of clean financial history that now allow banks or any kind of financial institutions to understand this business and to direct them to provide them financial services.
Initially, even SMEs themselves, the perception is already high within the banking sector that they are high-risk ventures. Then you couple it with green finance, that makes it even worse, because there's a perception that green projects are complex.
Blended finance is said to offer a win-win option for all parties, including development finance and philanthropic funders, private investors, wins for populations in developing countries and governments. Alanoko, Prime Edition.
A number of developing countries are opposed to a suggestion that subsidies on fishing activities be removed to control overfishing. Developing countries warn that removal of fishing subsidies will hurt their fishing activities and earnings. They instead want developing nations to reduce deep-sea fishing activities.
40 countries have signed a proposal to ratify removal of fisheries subsidies as a measure to replenish global fish stock. However, Kenya and other developing nations are opposed to the removal of the subsidies on fishing activities, saying the move will hurt small-scale fishmongers in developing countries.
Countries that are fishing far from their countries of origin, which we call distant fishing, we should control that a bit more. But for countries that are fishing within their exclusive economic zones or nearby, then they should be allowed to continue doing fishing on a commercial basis that also helps them meet their export needs.
The European Union argues that fishing subsidies are aiding commercial fishing that has seen rapid depletion of the global fish stock.
The point of fisheries subsidies agreement is actually the environmental point, so to ensure sustainability of fishing, to avoid overfishing, and to correspondingly put disciplines on fisheries subsidies which may lead to overfishing.
Developing nations say if fishing support is cut down, it might expose most of their population to malnutrition and missed revenue targets from fish trade.
Wavuvi wadogo kufika wavuvi wa kati na hatimaye kufika wavuvi wa juu. Kwa hiyo kama nchi hatuko tayari kuhakikisha tunaingia kwenye mkataba ambao utaenda kuumiza sekta ya uvuvi kwa namna yoyote ile. Kwa sababu tunavyoenda kuiathiri sekta ya uvuvi, tunaenda kuathiri biashara katika mazao ya bahari, tunakwenda kuathiri viwanda vinavyochakata mazao ya bahari.
Least developing countries are instead calling on developed nations to reduce commercial deep sea fishing.
Countries that have done significant utilization of ocean resources, they should slow down.
Bado hatuwezi tukaruhusu subsidies kutolewa.
Benson Riya reporting for Prime Edition.
SACCO members should leverage networking opportunities with local or international entrepreneurs to exchange ideas and learn how other businessmen deal with challenges in their areas. Harambee SACCO chairman Claude Malonza says such forums offer service providers a platform to sensitize members on the necessary skills to run businesses effectively.
Several financial institutions have established millionaires clubs where members are exposed to customized services such as trainings.
Initially, I didn't have that urge of, investing. I think it was lack of education. But later on, I came to understand and also to know the benefits of investing.
Among key skills taught at such clubs is business acumen and linkages with local and foreign entrepreneurs.
We're trying to show them about the benefits of savings, because you can't create wealth without savings. You need to save for you to borrow so that you can create wealth.
During such platforms, the SACCO offers business coaching and financial advice, especially to entrepreneurs setting up their business.
We have opened the common bond and will be onboarding also now those who are not necessarily employed by the government, but even say employees like Sarova Hotel and other institutions. They'll be at liberty also now to join and enjoy the benefits of being a member of Harambee SACCO. He
says pooling of resources for a specific cause is among ways to surmount the challenge of capital access that most businesses face. Edna Murungi for Prime Edition.
A strengthening shilling is helping reduce the overall public debt, especially for debt denominated in foreign currency. Budget and Appropriation Committee Chairperson Ndindi Nyoro says this is being supported by fiscal consolidation and growing revenue mobilization to address public debt without compromising on service delivery.
At the height of the shilling rallying towards the 160 mark against the dollar, economists said when a local currency lost by a shilling to the dollar, the public debt increased by 30 billion shillings. In recent weeks, the shilling has rallied from a low of over 160 per dollar to about 145 to the greenback. This has impacted the public debt, as the Budget and Appropriation Committee Chairperson explains.
The current shilling is around 1.146 or thereabout. In my estimation, the shilling may gain further. And it's based on a few things. One, we are doing very well in agriculture. That diminishes our X-M because our imports become lower.
Coupled with this, He says the government is implementing growth-friendly fiscal consolidation to slow the growth of public debt.
Our debt to GDP ratio could be maybe in the regions of shy of around 70%. And some would argue, but you say it is about 55%. That is a target, and it had a timeline that within the next 5 years, we try to balance our debt, we try to consolidate our debt, that is domestic and foreign, as a share of GDP at 55% or below.
The draft 2024-2025 budget policy statement has proposed to reduce by 180 billion shillings the budget deficit, which stood at 886 billion shillings in the current financial year.
We need to emancipate our budget-making process from the resources of other people so that we budget with what we have. But that process is gradual, and that is why we are already climbing down in a huge manner. We have already shed off a deficit of over 100 and around 80 billion shillings comparative to last year. That's a good step in the right direction.
Ndutamo Kami for Prime Edition.
Thank you, Nduta, for that report. Now, Lake Magadi is among the few places in the world where Tuna, which is a naturally occurring mineral that contains sodium carbonate, is found. The lake is known for its hot springs and algae that attracts the birds, making it a favorite destination for a day trip or a bird watching tour. Here is Irene Muchuma Odim with the details on tonight's episode of Magical Scenes.
Lake Magadi is a unique and breathtaking natural wonder situated in the southern part of Kenya. The lake's water is salty due to the saline hot springs that recharge the basin from time to time. It is believed that millions of years ago, this lake was not saline at all. The lake is said to have got its name from rare hydrosodium silicate mineral, the magadite, which was discovered along its shores at the end of the 20th century. One of the outstanding attractions is its hot springs. The naturally carved depression on the ground with bubbling waters is good for sightseeing. However, people bathe with it in a belief of medicinal value to the skin.
This is the last lake from the south for Rift Valley lakes. The lake is big, it is 100 square kilometers. That is the total surface area of the lake. Though it is being subdivided by a small island, so it has several islands on it. Where we are now, we are at the Lake Magadi Hot Springs. It forms some natural jacuzzi where people just come and have a bath on them. So Lake Magadi, and it has several springs within the lake. So we have several. We have others on the Little Magadi, that's the northern side of Lake Magadi, and we have these ones now on the southern side of the lake. But the springs are 40 degrees hot. That's the maximum they can get.
Nonetheless, the water in this lake evaporates during dry seasons. During this process, the algae of its seabed starts a chemical reaction to the remaining salt and turn the lake pink in color. Locals believe the magical pink color at the lake attracts the migratory flamingo birds. Known for its pink color, Lake Magadi is one of the destinations you would visit any time of the year and enjoy the picturesque view brought about by the birds. Now, you see, the birds here at Lake Magadi migrate from Lake Natron as they search for food. This is their feeding ground. Other birds to be spotted at the lake include chestnut, banded plover, and white-bellied canary.
Yes, the lake is rich with many birds. Many of them are the flamingos, that's the larger family. Here we have both the greater flamingo and the lesser flamingo. We also have pelicans, yellow-billed storks, marabou storks, black-winged stilts, African spoonbills. So those are several birds that we have here.
Beadworks, sunbathing, picnics, and nature walks are among activities you can engage in while on a tour of Lake Magadi. Irene Nchuma Odim, magical scenes in the county of Kajiado.
Cynthia kungoja kwenye star 570 hash kuna ploti na ni up to 1.1 million Kenyan shillings with a genuine title deed na inakungoja star 570 hash ukana shake.
Ili kupata msubiri Mungu kama skiza tune yako, bonyeza star 812 star 501 hash.
Kijana kanipigia simu amejawa na huzuni. Amefadhaika yuhoi. Nikamuuliza kunani? Japo nimetia jitihada za mtu wa kujenga nyumba kwa mate, nikaongeza kumcha Mungu, sifanikiwi. Naishi kama lofa mlala hoi, kabwela wa madongo.
Kupata msubiri Mungu kama skiza tune, bonyeza star 812 star 501 hash. Star 812 star 501 hash.
CAF Champions League brings together the best of the best in the African football scene this weekend. Champions League, where legends rise.
Welcome back. Fintex are calling for establishment of one regulator to reduce bureaucracy and an overlap of roles. The Association of Fintex in Kenya chairperson Ali Hussein Kasim says streamlining regulations will help address the challenge of fragmenting regulatory landscape.
The Central Bank of Kenya, CBK, is a primary regulator for fintech companies in Kenya. However, other authorities oversee the services and products, including the Capital Markets Authority, the Insurance Regulatory Authority, and the Communications Authority of Kenya. Players in the sector say the fragmented regulatory landscape has posed a challenge in the growth of the sector. Kasim has emphasized the need for a cohesive regulatory framework with a unified regulatory body.
There has to be some policy intervention to ensure that more people get into the digital ecosystem without, this is a delicate balance, without hurting the players who've rightly earned their market share in the ecosystem.
Kenya is expected to host the Africa FinTech Festival in June this year. offering industry leaders, innovators, and policymakers a platform to exchange ideas and collaborations.
We are going to be talking about access to markets. We are going to be talking about how we empower fintechs through impactful funding. We're expecting 300 organizations.
Kenya is seeking to inspire more collaborations and innovations in the Africa fintech ecosystem as attention shifts to the upcoming Africa Fintech Festival, which will be held this June. Reporting for Prime Edition, my name is Frederick Mwoki.
Thank you, Frederick Mwoki, for that report. The largest cargo ship to ever dock at the port of Mombasa made its maiden call on Thursday morning from Durban, South Africa. The vessel, measuring 318 meters in length, is a vote of confidence in Kenya's premier port.
Pondo huu samaki ambaye anaita tuna. Kwa sababu gani? Kwa sababu serikali kuu imewekeza, kuna kiwanda pale cha Liwatoni ambacho kina deal sana na nini? Na tuna fish. So, tusipokuwa na samaki wa kupeleka pale katika kiwanda, basi it will be a white elephant.
MSC MV Kotka Monrovia, Liberia, the largest cargo ship to ever dock at the port of Mombasa, made its maiden call on the port of Mombasa. The container vessel has a capacity to ferry 80,000 20-feet equivalent containers.
She's going to load 5,877 containers. That's a big volume.
Kenya Ports Authority officials were at hand to receive the vessel.
It's going to enjoy the efficiency and the capacity of the port, and it's not just by chance, it's a choice.
They said the vessel is a vote of confidence on the port of Mombasa, coming on the hot heels of 3 cruise ships and several cargo and oil vessels that have docked at the port this year.
This is revenues for the port. This is traffic for the port. And this ship does not call anywhere or any port. It calls those ports that are efficient and have the capacity to handle it. And Mombasa is one of them, if not the only one in the region.
The vessel, which is equivalent to 3 football fields in length, arrived from Durban, South Africa, and will head to Abu Dhabi.
We are going to have lower imports, lower prices to the last person. And this then will help the shippers and also the importers.
Juni Karisa Mbele from Mombasa County.
Kenya should effectively manage tuna and tuna-like resources in the Indian Ocean due to its huge demand in the market. Mombasa County Executive Committee member in charge of Blue Economy, Kabibi Abdallah, says there is a need for tuna fish protection and transboundary fishing concerns that robs Kenya the catch from the Indian Ocean. Abdallah was speaking during the National Tuna Fishery Management Workshop in Mombasa.
Sisi tunatilia pondo huu samaki ambaye anaita tuna. Kwa sababu gani? Kwa sababu serikali kuu imewekeza, kuna kiwanda pale cha Liwatoni ambacho kina deal sana na nini? Na tuna fish. So, tusipokuwa na samaki wa kupeleka pale katika kiwanda, basi it will be a white elephant. Itakuwa ni kitu ambacho hakisaidii na misho kitafungwa na takuwa pesa ya serikali imeharibika bure. So, sisi kama washikadau wengine huku wa uvuvi tunafaa kutilia pondo kuhakikisha kuwa tunaweka mikakati ambayo inasaidia kuleta production ya samaki pale baharini.
Tuna ni katika ufuo wetu wa pwani wanapatikana kwa wingi, lakini utaona vile mapato tunapata kwa wingi, lakini utaona ile bei tunauza bei iko chini. Kama Indonesia ama Philippines utaona wavuvi wadogo wanavua tuna lakini wana qualify kuuza kimataifa. Lakini utaona hapa Lamu kuna changamoto nyingi, tunapata kwa wingi lakini paka wakifika pale kwenye soko utaona kidogo wengine wameanza kuregea, wameweza kuharibika na hatimaye tunapata bei duni. Vile vile pia kuna hizi trawlers ambao pia zina target ama longliner ambao zinatoka nchi jirani pengine kama Korea. Hizi pia zinatuathiri kwa sababu kulingana na zile management plan wanaruhusiwa wasije karibu na ufuo za pwani, lakini utaona wao ikifika usiku wanakuja kwenye zile fuo.
wanatandikwa, wale wazee wanapigwa viboko.
Usiniite mzee mimi
wewe
mama na huyo mzee. Wewe unafanya nini? Mzee unafanya nini? Ninajuaje? Si labda ni bwana huyo mama. Nasikia huyo mzee ni mpishi huko. Sasa na hiyo chakula yote si ndio ula.
Kwa sababu wajua vile nyinyi ufanya watu. Mshtakiwa pili una swali?
Hii mbegu mbaya hii.
Uliza swali. Lazima usikie huzuni maana sasa kuku hutakula.
Sasa ukienda ndani kuku hakuna.
How do you say welcome in your language?
No.
So today we're making egusi soup with goat's meat.
As we allow our egusi to boil, you said it's going to take about 5 minutes and it's looking so good. I love the color from the palm oil.
We're practically done in mixing it.
Right. Eunice, thank you so much for coming all the way and teaching us how to make egusi soup, the traditional Igbo way. I love it.
Africa needs $190 billion for climate mitigation annually until the year 2030 and a further $50 billion per year to 2050 for climate adaptation.
Africa is responsible for only 10% of greenhouse gas emissions, but the impact of climate change affects Africa the most, especially the low-income earners. Now, to deal with these challenges, we require quite some investment, especially from the private sector, and we just want to find out what it would take to attract this particular investment. To have this conversation is Mary Porter Peska, who is the Regional Director for Eastern Africa at the IFC. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Betty, for having me.
You're welcome. Now, the need that Africa has for this particular investment into sustainable development. Please give us the context.
Well, as you started out in your opening, Africa contributes relatively minor amount of GHG emissions to the world, and yet it's the continent that is most impacted by weather-related disasters, meaning things like droughts and floods, which obviously has a knock-on effect on lives, quite literally lost, but also on businesses and on smallholder farmers, which you can imagine then has a knock-on effect to exports, but also to food security when the farmers have to contend with these adverse events, destroying their crops and slowing them down. So it really is climate change and its effects are more than one singular effect. And if you'll allow me, just one other thought is that climate change also intersects with a lot of other key themes on this continent. For example, conflict. There are a number of countries on the African continent that are very fragile and very poor. They aren't equipped to deal with the effects of climate change, with adverse weather conditions, with these weather-related disasters I referenced a moment ago.
Even as Africa faces these challenges, of course, we have to mitigate them. And for this, as I said, we need funding.
In fact, you need funding for mitigation and adaptation. Right. Africa alone needs $190 billion per year up until 2030 for mitigation. And when it comes to adaptation, Africa needs $50 billion a year all the way up to 2050 for adaptation.
Those numbers are big.
Those are big numbers.
Those are big numbers.
We're nowhere near it.
Right. And of course, there are very many competing interests for the money that there is in the world. So how do we ensure that we are attracting these funds?
Those numbers are big. It obviously implies that you're going to need all hands on deck, the public sector, the private sector. And in fact, I recently read a statistic that said 2/3 of those amounts I just shared will have to be delivered via the private sector. So how do we get the private sector ready for that investment? And how do we get get private sector investors ready to come to Africa, invest in projects. And I think it's a story that goes beyond capital. It's, do you have a business conducive regulatory environment, a friendly business environment that companies, local, regional, and global, want to operate in? Do you have companies that are ready to absorb the investment? Do they have a robust business model? Do they have key financial management and environmental and social management skills? Are they ready? And I think sometimes, even if they're ready, and even if you have the capital, you might need some sort of risk mitigating measures, guarantees and risk sharing facilities, and even in some cases when a project is very promising, can contribute a lot of development impact, could even potentially be commercially viable down the road, you might need some sort of concessional finance, more attractive interest rates to help get that entrepreneur or help get that project off the ground.
Right. I like the points that you're bringing, because when private investors are looking to invest, they're looking at the commercial viability,
Yes.
They're looking at minimized risks. But greenhouse, or rather green projects, require very high capital. They are capital intensive. So how is Africa going to ensure that they are attracting these private investors to sustainable development?
Well, so the answer probably varies. As you know better than I do, it's a continent with a lot of countries and at very diverse stages of development. But some of the things I've seen since I've been here is there are a number of governments that are, for example, proactively looking at developing sustainable roadmaps, green finance roadmaps. What does the central bank governor and the minister of finance and other key public sector players need to do to crowd in green finance, if you will, both from local private sector players as well as from foreign private sector players. And I think that roadmap is super critical, and it's usually developed from the instances I've seen, both in partnership with the government, with the regulators, but also importantly with, for example, banking associations that are representing the private sector. Because again, we're going to need each player coming to the table, making some adjustments and having a common vision. That's sort of the macro part of it. Then you obviously need to have interested private sector players with great business ideas and associated great business models, as I said a moment ago. And then you're going to need to have the financiers. And in Africa, I think we need them to reflect the spectrum of businesses here. We say that 90% of the private sector in Africa is SME, but I would argue most of the businesses are micro and small. We need many more medium and large businesses on the continent going forward if we're going to deliver on climate or women's economic empowerment or any other strategic priority for the governments and the societies.
Right. So even as we attract these investments, of course, they are going to these small businesses. How can we ensure that the businesses are investment ready?
Well, I think there's two sides of the equation. And I'd say first, if we're going to go and invest in smaller businesses, institutions like my own and bigger institutions are likely going to do it through an intermediary. So, for example, we would invest in a local bank that would then on-lend to smaller businesses, or we'd invest in a venture capital fund that would take an equity position in a smaller business. And for those entities to be able to do that successfully and effectively, they need to understand the SME market well. They need to understand the risks. So, for example, in my experience in a past job working a lot with women entrepreneurs, we see that often when a male-owned venture capital fund assesses a male-owned business, they assess it for the potential growth. When they assess a woman-owned business, they assess it based on the risk that they see. So it's not a level playing field. So we really need to sensitize banks, equity funds, venture capital players to really understand smaller businesses, women-owned or otherwise. Then the other side of the equation is, are these smaller businesses, do they have entrepreneurial self-confidence? Do they know how to put together a robust business plan? Can they successfully pitch their business? Do they have the network they need? Do they need mentoring from someone that's in their industry? You know, there's a whole host of things that need to come together for that equation to add up.
I like that you mentioned the things that they need to deal with, you know, for the equation to come to add up. The issue of governance, especially for small businesses. Some people start small businesses without the know-how of how to run these businesses. And sometimes problems that could have been dealt with in the early stages come to bite them in the future. So what would be your advice to small businesses in that front?
Well, I'll tell you, so a past job I had was running IFC's Global Department for Environment, Social and Governance, and my corporate governance team at the time had put together lots of resources for small businesses, for family-owned businesses, which are quite common here. I think it's really important that small businesses do their homework so that they can uncover what they don't know. It's really, you don't know, as an entrepreneur, you don't have to know everything, but you do have to have a sense of what you don't know, and you do have to be able to look around and find the resources that you'll need to get yourself ready so that you don't make those mistakes that you referred to that could have been avoided if you had thought ahead of time.
And do you think that the SME market is doing that in Africa?
I think so. It's probably rather fragmented. I think my institution is not the only institution in Africa that's working to support entrepreneurs and SMEs. Many development agencies, many foundations, many local consultancies. The question is, are we getting the stars to line up? Are the firms that we're helping to build then able to pitch in front of the right sources of potential financing? You know, can extra help be given, whether it's a concessional source of financing in the case that I mentioned earlier, very exciting, great potential impact, just might not ready to be commercially viable. You know, a lot of it is about the timing of everything lined up. And what we're trying to do in certain markets in the region right now is we call it the Local Champions Initiative. We're systematically assessing the market for potential SMEs for us to partner with and invest in. And then we're now in the process, once we've got about 25 or 30 per market, deep diving to see where are they? What does their business model look like? Where are the gaps? How can we help them? Can we bring them to a place where we could invest in them eventually ourselves? Or perhaps one of the local banks or local funds that we're invested in, could they invest in them? You know, how do we help them achieve capital to develop and grow their businesses?
You said that Africa, I mean, the whole world is very fragmented, but Africa has its own unique challenges. So what are your thoughts on innovating for local problems? Because I might innovate something, it works in Kenya, might not work in Rwanda, you know? So what are your thoughts on that, innovating for local challenges?
So first off, you need local people and local partners if you want to innovate for local challenges. That's my experience not only in Africa, but the 6 years I lived in the Middle East and the 5 years I've lived in Latin America and the various corners of the world I've traveled to. And IFC today has 850 staff on the continent working on investment, working on advisory services and technical assistance. Some of us are African, some of us are from other parts of the world, and we are out there working with private sector players, public sector players, civil society to really truly understand the need and work with these partners to craft a solution that's fit for purpose, that isn't just imported in and attempt to put the round hole on the square or the square on the round hole, whatever that phrase is.
So it's time for the young people to rise up in Africa.
Oh, yes. And there is an energy. You know, one thing I really think, you can get very depressed reading the newspaper about Africa. There's conflict, there's climate, there's debt burdens, and you can think, how do we get through? But then think about the resources of this continent and the potential they represent. Human resources, natural resources, the entrepreneurial spirit. I think I already mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier in the conversation, but there are more women starting businesses on this continent than any other place of the world. You have entrepreneurship in your genes here. Creativity. We're sitting in Kenya today, the home of M-Pesa, the home of using technology to support financial inclusion. If Africa can't come up with cool solutions, I don't know who can with that sort of raw power and those sort of resources.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of women, I mean, they're coming up with all these businesses, but there are numerous challenges that they face, even as they seek to scale these businesses. Is enough being done to empower women?
Given the magnitude of need on the continent, the short answer is no, but I can tell you IFC and our broader World Bank group are very committed to women, very specifically committed to women's economic empowerment, and are putting a lot of time and resources through to helping them. Some of it is through our investments. We just launched a program called She Wins Africa, and that is about capacity building the women, readying them for financing. It's also about capacity building the fund managers so that they're ready to assess appropriately and effectively these women-owned businesses opportunities. So that's one thing we're doing, but there's a whole host of things. We're working at empowering women as consumers, as employees, and as leaders. We've been pushing very hard in recent years to get more women onto executive management teams in the companies we're invested in, as well as onto the board. In fact, today, the nominee directors that sit on boards of companies that are IFC investees are 62% women.
That's big.
That's big.
That is really big. And we hope that more organizations, take up the challenge. So what is the future looking like in terms of impact development for Africa?
Well, this year we invested in Africa $11.5 billion US. That's a record year for us, and I think that does relate quite directly to the fact that we've invested our own resources in the continent in terms of setting up a lot of offices, putting in a lot of expertise, 850 people on the ground. But I can tell you that our boss would like us to have another record year and then another record year. So that's where I think we're headed, to continue to grow our program here, to continue to focus efforts on key strategic priorities for us. Of course, climate, also gender. Also, it's very important for us that our investments don't just happen in the 4 largest markets. That last year, in fact, we invested that $11.5 billion in 40 markets on the continent. We need to keep that up. There are needs across the countries.
As we come to a close of this conversation, of course, we have seen the need that there is for investments, to bring investments into Africa. What would be your closing remarks on that?
I think there's tremendous potential in Africa, and Africa has the capacity to be the solution to these challenges and to avail itself of the opportunities. I like to think of challenges as opportunities, and I think there are a number of us that are standing ready, organizations like my own, the International Finance Corporation, like Sankalp and IntelliCap, and the multitude of development finance institutions and aid agencies and foundations, and even companies, homegrown and global, who want to be a part of this journey. It's a journey that I'm 110% confident Africa is going to succeed on, and that it's going to own. And again, I think importantly, it's going to shape its solutions. And we should be along for the ride and helping the companies and the countries every step of the way.
I like that. The optimism is great. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you, Patty.
I have been speaking with Mary Potter Peska, who is the Regional Director for Eastern Africa at the IFC. We have talked about matters impact financing, ensuring that the funding that is so much needed for Africa is being attracted to African countries to ensure that we are solving the continent's problems, especially those caused by climate change. My name is Betty Kiptum. Thank you very much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your viewing. Bye-bye.
Shambani mbili yako ni gani kwenye star 570 hash. Every 100 shillings unayotumia kwa Lucky Game inakupa 1 entry point ya kuingia kwenye drum ya draw ambayo inakupa fursa ya kujishindia moja kati ya shamba hizi mbili. Mwisho wa April namtangaza mshindi wa shamba hili la 1.1 million Kenyan shillings na unapata title deed yako safi. Na mwisho wa Mei namtangaza mshindi wa shamba hili la 1.1 million Kenyan shillings, lori za mawe na mchanga. Ploti ndizo hizi. Dial star 570 hash. Title deed ndio hii. Fuka na shake.
Yes, indeed, and a very good evening. Welcome to Channel 1 Sports. I'm Bernard Okumu, and let's begin with rally, where top World Rally Championship drivers will grace the official launch of the Kenya Rally School, which will coincide with Loldia Shakedown in Naivasha on March 27th. Now, the Rally School will be open to the public.
Sports Cabinet Secretary Ababu Namwamba revealed that the Rally School is one of the ministry's legacy that will be used to groom Kenya's future rally drivers.
You are going to have that whole Easter Exodus, which is an annual ritual, combined with the Vasha Exodus. So we have a double challenge to confront.
Speaking at Talanta Hela during the unveiling of Safari Rally Project CEO Charles Gasheru, the CS revealed that he is in talks with WRC promoter to unveil the school as soon as the dust settles after shakedown. Shakedown is a pre-race activity that helps teams to dust off the cobwebs as well as warm their engines well in time for action proper the following day.
As we do Vasha, we'll also be promoting Team Kenya as they prepare to go to Paris for the Olympics 2024. This year, we are also ramping up our preparation for the Africa Cup of Nations 2027. We will also be highlighting Kenya as a destination for AFCON 27. So this event is also giving us a platform to beam the light, the spotlight, on other activities that are coming up.
Principal Secretary Peter Zoom challenged the Secretariat to run a successful World Rally Championship in Naivasha.
This time around, we are zeroing in on what we call the fan experience. And basically what we are saying about the fan experience is that we want fans and everybody else not to entangle themselves into this commonly known as traffic snarl-ups. Because a team that plans is a team that should be able to foresee that given the numbers that will be there during those 3 or 4 days, we need to have done something prior to that.
This year's Safari Rally, the third leg on the WRC calendar, will be flagged off on March 28th and will be followed by the Kasarani Super Special Stage, where Nairobi fans will have a chance of viewing the cars in top of actions.
I appeal to everybody who will be driving down to Naivasha, either for the rally or driving through Naivasha, going for the Easter holidays. Kindly obey the many traffic policemen we are going to have there. Do not overlap. The more traffic there is, the more disciplined we need to deal.
Daniel Mwendwa, Prime Edition.
And away from Raleigh to GSU, where headquarters company ladies volleyball team are through to the finals of the in-progress GSU Intercompanies Volleyball Championship after seeing off Romeo Company by 3 straight sets in the semi-final. Now the final is set for tomorrow at Embakasi B Training Campus here in Nairobi.
Headquarters ladies who enjoy unbeaten run in the competition eliminated Romeo ladies by 3-0 to qualify for the finals of the championship. Headquarters finished top in the ladies category with 9 points from 4 matches.
Imekuwa ngumu kiasi, hata ukiangalia score sheet tumekuwa tukifika 2021, but nilipea my teammate motivation, nikawaambia mpaka tuingia finals, na wameweza kunifurahisha juu tumecheza tukachukua 3-0 na kesho tunatarajia tunaingia finals na tutaweza kubeba kikombe.
It was not that easy. Even if you ask them, they were really fighting. The other team that we were playing with, they were equal to the task, but because we really trained good, that is why we really won this game. We were very prepared mentally and physically.
Meanwhile, the men's competition will enter the semi-final stage tomorrow, with the final set for later in the day. Foxtrot Company qualified for the semi-finals after beating host Embakasi B Campus 3-0. Headquarters Company thrashed Charlie Company 3-0 to qualify for the semis, while Alpha Company defeated Decoy 3-1 to also make it to the last 4.
Our look forward is to beat our competitors. I know the competitors have also trained, but due to the skill that we have applied all the way long, I hope we will succeed.
The final of the 4-day event, which has attracted over 20 GSU company teams, is slotted for Friday at the GSU Embakasi B campus. For Prime Edition, I'm Sela Onyango.
And organizers of the annual Sports Personality of the Award Soya have received sponsorship boost worth 2 million shillings from Safaricom ahead of the gala scheduled 1st of March at KCC in Nairobi. Now, this year's edition marks 20 years since the awards, which seeks to recognize the country's top sports performers, was incepted. This award has 13 categories, including the top performing schools category, which makes a return after 1 year hiatus. Reigning East Africa hockey and volleyball champions Nyamira Girls from Siaya County and Kwantanze from Machakos County are among the contenders. Other categories include Sports Personality of the Year Award, Sportswoman and Sportsman of the Year, Team of the Year, Sportswoman, Man Living with Disability, Coach of the Year Award, School Team of the Year, among others. A total of 1,000 guests are expected to attend the feat. Meanwhile, the 2024 NCBA Golf Series is set to tee off this Saturday at Kenya Railways Golf Club. The series is set to encompass a total of 23 legs traversing Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania and Rwanda. According to the tournament partners, NCBA Bank, the tournament in its 4th edition seeks to inspire the growth of the sport in the country. In addition to the local series, the program will also see the hosting of 3 junior tournaments in Nakuru, Nanyuki and Kakamega. Also, top-performing athletes at last year's Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon have been awarded. The prize money was released on Tuesday after rigorous checks and certifications by various global athletic bodies, as well as the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya. Alphonse Kigen and Evelyn Churchill, who emerged winners of the 42-kilometer individual men and women categories during last year's edition of the race, received 2 million shillings each. A total of 40 million shillings was issued as prize money. The race organizers, meanwhile, have intensified their efforts of having the race attain an elite level race. Finally, Athletics Kenya is set to select a team of 30 athletes for the 13th edition of the All-Africa Games scheduled for Accra, Ghana between the 8th and 23rd of next month. According to AK, only the winners of each event during the national trials set for March 5th and 6th at Nyayo National Stadium will make the cut. Meanwhile, it's all systems go for the Saturday National Cross Country Championship at Ruiru Prisons Staff and Training College, where the first 6 athletes across the line in each event will be selected to represent the country at the World Cross Country Championships in Belgrade, Serbia. And across the borders, where Manchester United and Liverpool set up a tantalizing FA Cup quarter-final by winning their fifth-round ties when already aware of the potential prize. Now with the draw done before Wednesday's games, United beat Nottingham Forest and then Liverpool denied Southampton. Holders Manchester City have been given home draw against Newcastle United. Chelsea beat Leeds to set up a home tie with Championship leaders Leicester. Now the quarter-finals are scheduled to take place across the weekend of Saturday, 16th of March.
And it's Peska. This is how probably Leeds expect the game to be played. Need to make sure there are no gaps. And there is a gap. And Nicholas Jackson has found it. And that's just what Pochettino ordered. It's the Chelsea pressure starting to pick some holes in Leeds. And Mudryk, just like that. Well, he's been in the game. He's probably had one of his best spells in a Chelsea shirt. They seem to be playing most of their youth team in the first team tonight against Southampton in the big trophy. In from Anthony. He's got another one. Wow, what a night. Steaming in, Matthew Joseph.
Great ball into Kumas. Good try, brilliant goal! VAR looked at that, given away by Smallbone. Elliott. Dance! Oh, Rebo's lost it. Didn't reach Gakpo, away by Bednarek. Bradley! And Dance has made it 3! And sends Liverpool through to the FA Cup quarter-final.
In by Bruno Fernandes and all the way in. Casemiro claims the touch. He says it's my goal. It's certainly Bruno Fernandes' contribution that is massively telling. And it's almost certainly Manchester United who will claim their place in the quarter-final and break Forest hearts right at...
On that note, where the FA Cup quarter-final matchups is already out and Manchester United meeting Liverpool on 16th of March is how we end tonight's sport. Thank you so much for watching. I take it back to Cynthia to wind it down for us.
Thank you. And sports winds up tonight's bulletin. From me and the rest of the team, we wish you a very good night.
On KBC Channel 1, we are a TV station like no other. Get a taste of the best in entertainment.
Yes, indeed.